We've now passed the 100-day mark of Donald Trump's second presidency, and a lot has happened. But most notably is that his poll numbers have begun to show a picture that's sort of what I was anticipating a while back when I predicted what his approval ratings would look like throughout his second presidency. If you look on RCP right now, it's gone underwater by a noticeable amount. At the time I'm working on this, RCP has Trump sitting at 45.3% approval and 52.4% disapproval. That's a net disapproval of 7.1%. So, what's causing this? Honestly, I think it's pretty clear. Some people are going to push that it's about immigration. There's been a lot of controversial arrests and deportations that are, also a bit of a question on their constitutionality, but quite honest, I don't think this is what's lowering it. Americans have moved right on immigration, and it's still his top polling issue. You could also point to foreign policy. This is not going super well for Trump in just about any way, especially on Russia Ukraine, where he's not really managing situations as well as he'd want to, as Putin continues escalating, despite his frustrations and his insistence on a peace plan between the two countries, which, that's also pretty bad and concerning how it's going, but we'll get into that another time because, again, this um this doesn't seem to be the issue that I feel is really driving down his approval rating. I think that it's made Americans less trusting on him, on his abilities to manage the wars as well as he marketed on the campaign trail last year. Um, but I don't think it's this either. In fact, I think it's pretty simple why he's seeing a decline, and you probably guessed it as well, which is the economy, most notably the fallout from the tariffs. The Liberation Day situation clearly did not go as planned. The stock market really went downhill, causing Trump to do a 90-day pause on every country except China, and then he escalated with China. However, because of all the instability, which did recover after that 90-day pause, things are kind of not as bad as they once were. Again, it was almost certain a recession was coming soon, and now it's a lot less certain. It's possible we could be fine, but that's going to take months to figure out. Um, Something that has recently happened is Trump has announced, well, not necessarily announced, but he's leaning heavily towards easing up some of those car tariffs that he was talking about, which would make a lot of sense since manufacturers were going to suffer because of them. And a lot of the China relations, there's a lot of news that Trump is trying to negotiate with China now because he understands what's at stake. And I think it's possible, and it just seems this way because every country would suffer if this tariff were escalated. There's going to be some form of agreement and some form of ceasefire in this trade war. Interesting name to use in something not combat in recent years, but yes, I think that there is definitely a possible, uh, there's a future possibility that we're going to reach some form of a calming in this situation, no matter how soon it takes. I think that it is heading in that direction. We'll see. Things are very volatile in this political environment. But regardless of that, this has started to worry a lot of American voters who are now understanding that short term wise, regardless of whatever long term gains Trump would like to see from tariffs, this is going to cause a lot of hardship, and voters have begun to sour on that because prices are not coming down as they had hoped for under Trump. And there's even a lot of fear that inflation is going to actually start rising again. And because of all of this uncertainty and because of what people are now seeing and realizing, they're starting to pin a lot of the issues economically on Trump. And you'll notice as Donald Trump's approval rating has slid down to near double digit net negative territory, it's basically been matched by his economy approval rating falling in the same direction. It literally just seems to be that. Sure, mistakes have happened foreign policy wise, mistakes have happened immigration wise. However, those have not done damage to his approval rating like this has, because this is something that affects every single American. The economy is the one issue where if you do not have the public on your side, you really don't have an advantage. Biden learned this lesson the hard way, Kamala learned this lesson the hard way, and Trump appears to be learning this lesson the hard way. It's kind of a blessing to him he doesn't have voters to answer to anymore, because now this is his second term. He can't do a third one. Now, here's the thing. A problem with, even if he eases the tariffs, and this is going to take a while to ferment, but something to consider is, will this have a long term effect? Because again, even if he pauses the tariffs, well, again, inflation, that 2021 spike really hurt voters, and it came down about a year or so later, but voters still felt it because voters, and most people, unless you're an economist or unless you know exactly what inflation is, it doesn't quite seem to get into your head immediately, if you don't know this, that inflation coming down does not mean prices are going to come down. Odds are a lot of prices are not coming back down, because inflation just means how much value a dollar is going to lose. If the inflation rate comes down, it means it's not losing any more value, but what that value was initially is still there. And because of that, those prices that are still high, yeah, they're probably going to stay around that mark. Maybe they'll come down a little bit in future years as a lot of this has been led by price gouging. Maybe corporations will find incentive, and maybe they're losing money because people are less likely to buy. Maybe they'll ease it a bit, but regardless, this specific thing has sped up what I think was kind of very likely to always be a thing for Trump, that eventually voters would realize, oh, the economy isn't really changing from that inflation period because prices are still higher than they were in 2019. So this might have just sped that up. And we're going to see, again, how these deals work out, how the economy works itself in the next few years are still very much unknown. 4 years is a long, long time. So nothing is conclusive yet, but I predicted that Trump would always hover around 35 to 45. He's impressively still in the mid 40s territory. I think he's going to hover around. If I was 35 to 45 before, I would say 38 to 48 now is the new norm where I would expect him to hover, because he does have somewhat higher support than his first term. But yeah, early on, this has been quite a decline, and he kind of did it to himself.